Tonight, the high-stakes showdown. The vice presidential candidates coming face-to-face in their first debate.
Tim Walz's record is a joke. These guys are creepy and, yes, just weird as hell.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Ohio Senator Jaime Vance making their case on a national stage with just 5 weeks until Election Day.
It's all on the line, not just for the next 4 years, but for the next 40 years.
This as the world watches the growing war in the Middle East. Iran firing a barrage of missiles at Israel. Today's events highlighting the growing pressure on the White House and world leaders to de-escalate a war that is nearly a year old and expanding.
When you have weak American leadership and you have an American leader that nobody respects, you have wars breaking out all over the world.
With polls showing a razor-thin race, could tonight be a game-changing moment?
From NBC News, countdown to the vice presidential debate. Here's Tom Llamas.
We are live tonight inside the spin room near the debate stage tonight, where in just 2 hours, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Ohio Senator J.D. Vance will go head-to-head for the very first time. With exactly 34 days until the presidential election, this debate comes at an extremely critical moment. But first, we start with that breaking news in the Middle East after Iran launched a massive missile attack at Israel. This evening, there are growing concerns that the assault could push the volatile region even further into turmoil. Take a look at this. Nearly 200 missiles lighting up the night sky. In Jerusalem, sirens blared overhead as Israelis raced to take cover in bomb shelters. Rockets flying over Jerusalem's old city, home to some of the world's holiest sites. And it was a similar sight in Tel Aviv. You can see the flashes as Israel's air defense system intercepted Iran's barrage. New video showing the moment of impact as a missile lands just outside of Tel Aviv. Look at that. Iran's Revolutionary Guard saying the attack is in response to Israeli strikes that killed Hamas and Hezbollah leaders. Harrowing images as people ran for cover, ducking behind cars on a busy roadway. A mother holding her children tight as explosions could be heard overhead. And video showing what's left of an elementary school just south of Tel Aviv after a rocket struck. The IDF says there are no reports of casualties just yet or severe injuries inside Israel. But a Palestinian man was killed in the occupied West Bank by shrapnel. This video showing a massive piece of metal debris from at least one of the missiles in the region. And just moments before Iran fired missiles, 2 gunmen stormed the streets of Jaffa near Tel Aviv, killing at least 6 people and leaving a dozen others wounded. Palestinian Islamic Jihad taking responsibility for that deadly terror attack. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responding to the missile attack, saying, quote, Iran made a big mistake tonight, and it will pay for it. And earlier, the U.S. announcing the military coordinated with the IDF to defend Israel.
Naval destroyers joined Israeli air defense units in firing interceptors to shoot down inbound missiles. We have made clear that there will be consequences, severe consequences for this attack, and we will work with Israel to make that the case.
So the big question tonight, will Israel fire off a counterattack? And what role will the U.S. have, if any? Tonight, we hope to hear how Minnesota Governor Tim Walz or Ohio Senator J.D. Vance would handle such a crisis if they were in office. We have a lot to get to tonight, but we start with Raf Sanchez in northern Israel by the Lebanese border, who is live for us tonight. So, Raf, what have the last several hours been like for you and your team?
Well, Tom, our team came here to northern Israel expecting to see signs of Israel's ground offensive into southern Lebanon against Hezbollah. The border is just over that mountain ridge behind me, and we have been hearing outgoing artillery from this position all night. But we found ourselves staring in awe at the night sky as it filled with hundreds of Iranian missiles.
It began just after 7:30 local time.
I can tell you at this moment, the skies above us are lighting up.
What looked to us from the grounds like deadly shooting stars, Iranian ballistic missiles slamming down one after another near an Israeli airbase. Also seen over Jerusalem's western wall and across the country. Israel says its air defenses taking out most of the incoming missiles.
We are seeing some of these missiles, they are either falling apart, a sign that they have been intercepted, or they are making their way down towards the ground here in northern Israel.
The IDF says around 180 Iranian missiles fired in total in 2 waves, minutes apart.
We are once again seeing the skies lighting up now.
Traveling the nearly 1,000 miles from Iran to Israel in just 11 minutes. Later, like millions of others, we took cover when we heard the warning sirens.
That's the sirens. We're going to head to safety.
President Biden had ordered the U.S. military to assist in defending Israel. Tonight, the Pentagon saying U.S. Navy destroyers fired a dozen interceptors at the incoming missiles.
Obviously, this is a significant escalation by Iran, a significant event.
The U.S. condemning the Iranian action, saying dozens more ballistic missiles were fired than in Iran's previous attack on Israel back in April.
This is totally unacceptable, and the entire world should condemn it.
The IDF tonight saying there are no known fatalities or major injuries in Israel. Iran says the attack was a response to Israel's assassination last week of Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah, following nearly a year of Hezbollah rocket attacks on northern Israel. All of it with nerves already frayed here by an earlier mass shooting in Tel Aviv. At least 6 civilians killed when 2 terrorists opened fire on the light rail, police say. While in a late-night speech addressing the missile attack, Prime Minister Netanyahu saying Iran made a big mistake tonight, and it will pay for it.
Tom, every indication is that Israel is going to retain.
Sorry, Raf, I think we crossed lines there. I do want to ask you, what do we think Israel's going to be doing tonight? Do we think they're going to retaliate?
Tom, every indication is that Israel is going to retaliate. You heard Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu there saying that Iran will pay a heavy price. During that last missile attack back in April, Israel's response was very limited. It was a small strike against an Iranian satellite position. Israel never actually formally took responsibility for it. The stakes now feel much, much higher. We have seen Israel taking much more aggressive action, not just in Gaza, but also in Yemen, also in Lebanon, and there is every reason to think that they will move aggressively in Iran, too. One thing that is worth noting, Tom, at this point, with no reports of fatalities or anybody wounded, it may be that Netanyahu makes the decision to move this retaliation down at least one notch. Tom.
Do we know if Iran is done with their attacks on Israel?
Well, Tom, at this point, Iran is saying it feels that this round is over. They announced through their mission at the United Nations that they have completed their attack. Every indication we're seeing here, the Israeli military considers this to be over, that they have told people they can come out of their bomb shelters. And we're hearing from the White House that they feel this attack not only finished, but it failed. And at this point, the ball very much in Israel's court as Prime Minister Netanyahu and this country's senior leadership decide how to respond. Tom.
All right, Raf Sanchez for us. Raf, you and your team, please stay safe tonight. For more on the potential of this conflict turning into a wider war, I want to bring in Keir Simmons. He's live for us tonight in Doha, Qatar, where the Iranian president is expected to arrive tomorrow morning. Keir, I want to show a map to our viewers so they get a sense of where Iran is, right, on the globe, and Israel, because they're very far apart, right? There are several other countries in between Iran and Israel, and they essentially are going to be firing missiles over these countries, which essentially are now part of this wider war by proxy. Talk to us about the implications of this Iranian attack.
Well, that's right, Tom. And we here in Qatar are across the water from Iran, from where those missiles were launched. And isn't it stunning that President Pezeshkian of Iran will be here in Qatar for a 2-day international conference within 24 hours of Iran attacking Israel? And I think that's an example of the mixed messaging from Iran even now, even after all of this. Is Iran in an offensive mood? Is it in a defensive mood? And it does matter. You're right. It does have implications for countries right around the region. Countries that have large Palestinian populations have been worried about unrest and unhappiness there as the war has played out in Gaza. And then there are the geopolitical questions. Allies of the U.S., for example, who don't like what is happening, what Israel is doing, and the tensions that is creating. And of course, this region is known for its unintended consequences. That is one of the issues that has people worried about a potential escalation. One example of unintended consequences: how could what's happening here impact the election there, Tom?
Yeah, and how a misfire could land in a different country and start an entire different type of conflict. You've been leading some of our reporting about the hostage negotiations, so I'm curious what this wider war now does with those hostages, some Americans, most of them Israelis, now stuck in Gaza, being held by Hamas. Will this essentially end those negotiations? And I have to think it sets talks way back, maybe to a point that this never gets resolved.
You know, Tom, the diplomats that I talk to have been pessimistic about this for some time. Here in Qatar, for example, they describe themselves as mediators in this process. People have been critical of Qatar for being close to both sides in this crisis and trying to play that role of mediator as they describe it. But certainly, I think there is no sign of potential mediation right now. You asked Raf about what might happen next. Last time Israel targeted Iran after Iran targeted Israel, it hit a surface-to-air missile battery in Iran, in Isfahan. Will it try to do that again? Last time, what Israel was doing was indicating to Iran, we can get past any defenses you might have. We can even hit the missiles that you're firing at us. Will Israel decide that now is the time to do that with greater effect on a greater scale? And one last point, Tom, and this has people talking and many worried. Will Israel decide that now is the time to target Iran's nuclear program? Will the US get pulled in to the conflict through that process? And how is it possible to predict the implications of that, the consequences of that? That is why people talk about escalation. That is why people worry that it's difficult to keep a lid on this, to keep it under control.
Our Keir Simmons live for us tonight from Doha. Keir, we appreciate all your reporting. We do want to turn now to where we are tonight, our special coverage of the vice presidential debate, which is less than 2 hours away. Kicking us off here is senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell. Kelly, so great to have you here with us in Manhattan. Not a battleground state, right? Not exactly a battleground district in this election. I do want to ask you, how do you think what's happening in Israel and Iran is going to affect this debate?
I think it will be a pressure point on the moderators, especially Margaret Brennan, who covers a lot of foreign policy, Norah O'Donnell, steeped in this. I think they'll want to ask about it. And certainly it is about leadership and governance and relationships. All of those things are embedded in the election themselves. So between this and the adventures of the political space, sobering when you consider what Helene has done to so many Americans and what this conflict has done. So it's fun to be in the spin room. Elections can be fun. There will be some sober moments.
Yeah, and you talk about debate prep, but this proves that there can't be a lot of learning on the job when you're a commander-in-chief or even second-in-command, right? Because as you mentioned, we have the war now, and we have what happened with Helene that's going to be for sure a part of this debate. I do want to ask you, you cover the White House, so I'll ask you about the Democrats. Governor Walz, how is he preparing?
Well, he has done a lot of work with Pete Buttigieg, who has played J.D. Vance. And part of what they have focused on is wanting to talk about the Kamala Harris agenda. And Governor Walz, well known in Minnesota, not as much so across the country. And so his job is to really sell her case, because they believe for voters who will tune in tonight, who are base voters, they want to make sure they turn out and vote. And if there are those voters who are still shopping around, they want to make a good impression. So Governor Walz and J.D. Vance both came through the studio here that the host network, CBS, has put us all up. It's sort of like a broadcast club in here tonight. So it might not be a battleground, but boy, the conversation is about this election tonight.
Real quick before you go, what do we know about Walz, the debater?
Well, he's done a few as a governor, and his team says it's not his most comfortable format. He's much more into the retail politics. That's a very good way to try to lower
that bar. It's already started. All right, Kelly O'Donnell, I know you'll be with us throughout the night. We appreciate that. I want to turn now to Garrett Haake, who's been following the Trump-Vance campaign for us. Garrett, I'm going to ask you to do that sort of prototypical walk and talk around the spin room, if you can even do that. I don't know if you can, because this is sort of going to be a different type of spin room, right?
Come on, Tom, take a look. I mean, we'll call it a spin alley, a spin hallway, a much narrower room. You can see a lot of our broadcast colleagues here. We'll wave at you from the far side. We're back to back with you now. I don't want to wander too much into our competitors' shots here, but that's the nature of the beast in a room like this, a much smaller room for a smaller debate than what we saw in Philadelphia with the ABC debate. The stakes a little bit lower, the confines a little bit cozier, but I think it could get particularly interesting in here if J.D. Vance pulls a Donald Trump and decides to come in and tell us all about how he feels like he won the debate afterwards tonight, which I think is a very real possibility.
Yeah, and I wanted to point out the space because we've never seen a spin room sort of this size, right? It feels like almost like it's going to be a house party inside of a studio apartment. It can be a lot of fun. It could also be a little wild. What do we know about Senator Vance and his debate prep?
Yeah, and Tom, to that point, by the way, we are in John Oliver's studio here today. I don't think we'll see quite as much humor from either of these candidates tonight, but we do know that Vance has been preparing mostly at home in Cincinnati with a combination of Trump advisors, his own staff working with them, and Minnesota Congressman Tom Llamas, who's been playing the Tim Walz role in their debate prep, mainly trying to get Vance used to the way that Walz talks, used to the way in which they believe he gives kind of long, stem-windery answers. Vance, despite being not particularly practiced in debating, is pretty well practiced with the give and take with reporters. He did a ton of it as a senator on Capitol Hill. He does a lot of it on the campaign trail now. So the debate format, not something he's as used to, but the back and forth in a debate format like tonight with the mics open the whole time, I think is a manner in which he'll be very comfortable, particularly perhaps after this prep.
All right, Garrett Haake for us. Garrett, we appreciate all your reporting from the spin room tonight here. We're going to be checking back with you throughout this debate. For more on how former President Trump's running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, is preparing for this debate tonight, I'm joined now by Republican Congressman from Florida, Byron, who's here in the spin room for us in support of Senator Vance. Congressman, always good to talk to you at these events. First up, what do you know about Senator Vance's prep? What can you tell us?
Well, look, I think J.D.'s prep has been what he's been doing on the campaign trail and really in media interviews for the last month and a half now. He's really filled that vacuum left by Tim Walz and Kamala Harris, since they don't want to do press. They don't want to engage the media and actually explain their values, their policy to the American people. And so I think that has prepared him. Secondarily, J.D.'s incredibly intelligent, very well spoken. He's going to do great tonight. The big thing is he's going to explain to the American people why a Harris agenda and a Harris presidency will be bad for the United States of America, while also talking about Donald Trump's policies, which are going to lower inflation, get us back to stability in prices, secure our border, and in looking at foreign policy today, how he will not just bring peace to the Middle East, but actually give us a safer world in the process.
How does he bring President Biden into the debate hall? How does he bring Vice President Harrison to the debate hall if it's him and Governor Walz, and not get caught up in petty debates with Walz?
Because, listen, let's be honest. Tim Walz is a proxy for what has happened under the Biden-Harris administration the last 4 years. And then what Kamala Harris, if you can get her to talk about her policies, what she's going to do going forward. Those are critical pieces of information. Kamala Harris was a tie-breaking vote on inflation. So that causes crazy inflation in our country. She's been right there supporting massive open borders under Joe Biden. The foreign policy, Joe Biden said the other day on The View that she was right there with him, being supportive of all the decisions. So if she's not going to take the lead job, but can't explain to the press or to the people what she's going to do, all that tells me is she's going to continue to do what she has done with Joe Biden the last 4 years.
Senator J.D. Vance has had some hiccups on the campaign trail. An old video came up of him talking about childless cat ladies that he had to talk about for weeks, unfortunately, for his campaign. He's also was talking about people eating pets as well in Springfield, which turned out to be not true. How does he make sure that if Walz brings that up, he doesn't get bogged down and try to defend his comments?
Look, I think it's simple. If you want to talk about what J.D. Vance said in an interview before he was a United States Senator, that's fine. But what it proves is you don't care about the issues facing the American people. That's the stuff that matters, not only in this debate, but in this election.
You think he'll be disciplined enough to do that, to move the debate?
I totally believe that J.D.'s going to have the ability to do that, and he will do that, because it's not about Tim Walz or J.D. Vance. It's about the American people. What are the policies to make their lives better? What is the leadership our country needs at this critical time where we are seeing crises domestically and internationally to get our country on track? That's the path forward when Tim Walz tries to muck up this debate with personal attacks.
You know, when you're vice president, you're one heartbeat away from the presidency. Senator J.D. Vance has been in Congress, I think it's about 2 years. Before that, he wrote a book, bestseller. He was worked in investments as well in finance. Right. You think he's qualified to handle something like what's happening with Israel and Iran right now, with what's happening in North Carolina and Tennessee with Hurricane Helene?
No, I do. And the reason why is because J.D. served in our military, so he has not just domestic look at how military operations work, but also international views of that. Working in investments, you know capital flow, you know how economies move. You've been a part of that. Writing a book and explaining stories to people, that means you can actually have a vision, have an idea, share that with people, and they're willing to actually take some of those ideas in. Those are all parts of leadership that are necessary. But compare him to Joe Biden. Joe Biden's been in politics 50 years, and he's been a disaster as a president. Compare him to Kamala Harris. She was an attorney general. She was a U.S. senator, now a vice president. But what has she done? Has she demonstrated she can lead the country going forward? No, she has not. If she has demonstrated that, she would be telling the people every single day. She would be sitting with you doing interviews. She's not doing that. She is hiding. So I think JD's more than prepared.
Well, polls show that at least half the country, at least right now, the voting hasn't started, do believe she can do the job, but we're going to have to wait and see. Congressman, great to see you as always. We always appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Tonight's matchup, the first and likely only chance for these two running mates to go face-to-face and possibly the last debate before Election Day. With so much on the line, NBC's Meet the Press moderator, Kristen Welker, joins us now live with her insights. So, Kristen, so much has happened in the last 3 or 4 days in this country and also overseas in Israel and Iran that is going to shake up this debate. What are you looking for tonight?
Well, Tom, it's a great question, and I would start right there. I will be looking to see how each candidate deals with these developing stories. The aftermath of Hurricane Helene, and then, of course, what we have been covering throughout the day, this escalation by Iran in the Middle East. How clearly can Governor Tim Walz say what a President Harris would do if she were to be elected, and vice versa? How clearly can a Senator J.D. Vance state what a President Trump would do if he were to be elected? This is going to put foreign policy and, quite frankly, these types of crises, Tom, on the world stage front and center in this debate tonight. Now, if you just zoom out a little bit, right now, Vice President Kamala Harris does get higher marks when it comes to the commander-in-chief test, but it's pretty tied up. She's leading former President Trump by about 1 point. But this is a commander-in-chief moment, Tom, where you have all of these swirling crises to deal with at once. That is what happens when you are in the Oval Office. So can these running mates make it clear that they have a clear vision to address these issues? I'll also be looking to see how contentious this debate gets tonight. We know that Senator J.D. Vance is no stranger to throwing a punch like the person at the top of his ticket. But does he try to temper that? I've been talking to some Trump allies who say, look, they want him to be tough. At the same time, they want him to steer clear of controversies. And then I'll be looking to see if Governor Tim Walz can clearly enumerate and defend the Harris policies. I mean, one of the criticism and concerns, if you talk to Harris allies, is that this is one of his only unscripted moments of the entire campaign, Tom. And so is he ready to mix it up with the moderators and, of course, Senator J.D. Vance? Finally, I'll be looking to see if each of these candidates fact-check each other. CBS has said that there will essentially be a way to go online to get a fact-check of what the candidates are saying. But do they fact-check each other in real time? I think it's going to be a very compelling and important night, Tom.
All right, Kristen, welcome for us tonight. Kristen, we always appreciate all your reporting. I know you're going to be standing by for our special coverage here. We do want to move on now and talk a little bit more about Governor Walz, Vice President Harris's running mate, of course. Here with me now in the spin room is the chair of the Democratic National Committee, Jaime Harrison. Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for being here. So Democrats seem to be lowering the bar on Governor Walz, and I want to know why. He spent 12 years in Congress, 6 years as a governor, ran successfully in Minnesota. Why are you guys lowering the bar? Is he a bad debater?
Well, listen, I'm not lowering the bar. I love Tim Walz. I think he's a great guy. And it seems like from the polls, most of America loves Tim Walz. Now, we can't say that about J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is like that old used car salesman that you know is selling your lemon and you're desperately trying to get out. But this is a guy who is so slick. You know, he's a Yale grad. I'm a Yale grad. When we went to Yale, you're taught how to debate. You're taught how to do certain things. But what they don't teach you is genuineness. What they don't teach you is authenticity. What they don't teach you is empathy. And J.D. Vance just doesn't have that.
Is this this debate going to be about J.D. Vance, about name calling, about talking about weird personalities? No, but is it not going to be about the issues? I mean, is that the strategy for Governor Walz?
Well, Democrats always talk about the issues, and we can talk about the issues because we are deep and steep in them. The Republicans, on the other hand, are trying to run away from the issues that they have embraced. J.D. Vance is a poster boy for Project 2025, which will decimate our freedoms in this country, which will decimate the safety net that we have for the American people.
You know, a lot is being said about, was FEMA in place? Are there enough FEMA representatives in states like North Carolina and Tennessee following Hurricane Helene? How much of that do you think is going to be part of the debate? And can Governor Walz defend the Biden administration, saying, listen, FEMA's there, they're helping people? When on our show, we've talked to people that's saying, listen, we need FEMA's help. They're not here for us.
Yeah. You know, listen, I live in South Carolina. And I had some friends who were actually staying with us because their power got knocked out. You know, many of the places that were decimated in South Carolina and North Carolina, we go there for vacation. We're planning to go to Asheville for Thanksgiving. And so my heart goes out to those communities that I know so well, to the people impacted that I know so well. And so what I'm proud of is the response. All of these governors, Democratic governors and Republican governors, have said that President Biden has been delivering everything that they wanted, they've gotten. And that's what you want. You want a president to deliver those things, not to throw paper towels at folks, but to actually deliver resources. And President Biden's doing just that.
You know, Governor Walz has had two major moments, I think, since he was announced. One, when he was announced, he came out, and for a lot of Americans, that was the first time they got a look at him. And he did, by all accounts, a great job with that. At the Democratic National Convention, he also had a speech that people, especially Democratic voters, gravitated towards. How does he take that persona and bring it to a debate stage where it can get fiery and it can get nasty?
He just needs to be himself. He's a genuine guy. He's that uncle that you always want to hang out with and talk with because he has the most interesting stories, but he ultimately wants what's in the best interest of you. We cannot say that about J.D. Vance.
Speaking of telling stories, I want to put up something on the screen for our viewers now. This was in the news today. It was first reported by Minnesota Public Radio News that Governor Walz lied about being in Hong Kong in 1989 during the Tiananmen Square pro-democracy protests. That fits into a pattern that Walz has had during this campaign of saying things and they turn out not to be true. Does he have a pattern of exaggerating things? And are you worried about this as chair of the DNC?
No, what I'm worried about is J.D. Vance lying about his constituents, saying that his constituents, Haitian immigrants, are eating cats and dogs, and then admitting to actually lying about it, saying, well, you lied in order to make a point. That's what I'm concerned about. That is the height of hypocrisy. You don't lie about your constituents.
But do you have a problem? Do Democrats have a problem with Governor Walz and some of the stories and the exaggerations? He's already had to correct one of them.
Governor Walz is a good man. This is a man who made sure that kids in his schools had lunch and breakfast every day. I know how important that is. This is a man who's been protecting the reproductive freedom of women. I cannot say those things about J.D. Vance. You think about J.D. Vance, this guy is the least popular vice presidential nominee since Dan Quayle. And you know what? Sarah Palin had more experience than he did. So think about it. I guess he's in good company.
Jaime Harrison, always great to have you here. Always great to talk to you at these events. And good luck tonight in the debate. Our special live coverage of the vice presidential debate continues. Tonight, hurricane-ravaged communities are still reeling days after Helene made landfall. As the death toll rises, FEMA is facing mounting criticism over its response. We're live from the storm zone. Plus, how the VP candidates could handle questions like the urgent crisis happening right now. We'll be back in 60 seconds. And we are back now from the spin room ahead of the vice presidential debate right here in New York City. Another major event looming over tonight, the destruction from Hurricane Helene across the southeast. The death toll now surpassing 150 people. More than 1.5 million are still without powers as crews mount search and rescue operations across the region because still so many are missing. Former President Trump visiting a town ravaged by the storm in the swing state of Georgia yesterday. President Biden set to travel to North Carolina tomorrow to assess the damage. Our Sam Brock is in the Tar Heel State for us tonight in hard-hit Asheville. So, Sam, you just gotten access to a very remote part of the Asheville area. Describe what you're seeing there. And I guess my key question tonight for you is there relief there? Are those people getting the help they need?
Yeah, Tom, good evening. So we're in Swannanoa right now. This is sort of the outer reaches of the Asheville area, one of those communities that's been effectively off the map. You know, roads were blocked, highways were blocked. Interstate 20 ultimately was open today that allowed us to get down here. And it's an incredibly different and very terrifying, frankly, viewpoint of what this storm actually did. You look over my shoulder right now. Under normal circumstances, Tom, you're seeing something like this after maybe a tornado comes through and lifts up a car, or roads that are buckled to the point where pieces of cement have been ruptured and are sort of splayed out all over the roadway. That's what we just saw from where I'm standing. The death toll here in Buncombe County rose from 40 to 57, Tom. And you're actually hearing during this report the sounds of helicopters. We were there at a local hospital in Asheville today, Mission Health, when you could hear the medevacs bringing people in. It is not surprising at all that these remote areas have seen a significant jump. The total number of fatalities, as you mentioned, now 151 across 6 different states. As far as what we're seeing on the ground right now, look, you are getting supplies and MREs and water disseminated. That was such a crucial problem here, and it continues to be one because of the fact that you have 3 water treatment plants that have been totally compromised, Tom. You have pipes that would distribute this water that are just wiped away, right? So these are inherent problems that are going to last weeks, if not months, to fix. But as far as FEMA feeling the heat, FEMA came out as an agency and said today they have some 3,500 personnel across these 6 different states, 1,200 urban search and rescue personnel, and that they've disseminated 2 million liters of water, 1.9 million meals. And people here say, yeah, okay, but why is it that we only got water on Monday, 48 plus hours after this whole thing started? You have a nonprofit disaster relief company, Tom, that has been soliciting from people their planes so they can go make runs into the mountains, into areas like this to drop supplies. They said they've done 76 of those so far, and that was as of 4 or 5 hours ago. So you're seeing the gaps being filled from all these different spaces in the community as the heat continues to be on the federal government in terms of their response.
And then, Sam, before you go, is the water still receding? Are you still seeing areas where the water has no place to go, or is it getting slightly better?
Yeah, I haven't seen, frankly, Tom, a lot of standing water where it's several feet. I mean, behind me right now, this is probably 6 inches. There are entire gulfs and valleys where you're looking at feet of caked mud, which showed you just how much water was there. Cars that are actually stuck in mud, probably 3 to 4 feet high. That we are seeing a lot of, but standing water, not from where we've been able to get access, but that does not include the mountains. And, Tom, could be a very different scenario up there.
All right, Sam Brock for us tonight. Sam, we thank you for your reporting. The federal response to this disaster coming under fierce scrutiny in the wake of the hurricane, with the Biden administration's handling of Helene likely to be a point of contention on the debate stage tonight. For more on the political fallout from this storm, I want to bring in our political pros tonight. Hogan Gidley, former White House principal deputy press secretary during the Trump administration and advisor to House Speaker Mike Johnson, and Democratic strategist Antoine Seawright. We thank you both for being here. Hogan, I'm going to start with you. You know this area very well. You're from South Carolina. There's devastation in North Carolina and Tennessee. FEMA's under the microscope. How does this play into the debate?
I think it's actually going to be a huge issue in this debate, because when you have such entrenched voting bases for Kamala Harris and obviously for Donald Trump, there could be an outside force that really tips the scales in one of these candidates' favors. And in this particular instance, when you're talking about something like a hurricane and it's the disaster relief that is supposed to be executed by the federal government, you're going to start to see some failures that occurred here, not the least of which is we're finding out today that Kamala Harris didn't receive a single hurricane briefing that she was supposed to go to, didn't do any of them, which is not unusual for her because she doesn't do a lot of those briefings. She gets those books and doesn't read them. We all know that. It's been widely reported. But in addition to that, you can't stop floodwaters, no question. But what you can do is pre-position your assets in place. How many times have we seen hurricanes barreling in on Florida, and you see those trucks and those maintenance crews already staged at hotels just outside of where the epicenter of the hurricane is going to hit, and they're ready on day one as soon as that last drop of rain falls to get in there and start doing some of the work to get people's lives back. That didn't happen here, and there are going to be a lot of questions and a lot of voters out there in a state like Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina who are quite angry and looking for someone to blame, and I think they're going to blame Kamala Harris and Joe Biden.
Antoine, on my show last night, I spoke to a woman in North Carolina who has essentially no communication with some members of her family who are elderly, trapped in a remote part of North Carolina. Here's part of what she told me.
Honestly, I don't know how you did not have a formal press conference or something from either President Biden or Kamala Harris. I mean, how do you not say anything for 4 days? They've been stranded for 4 days, and this is the first we've heard from them at all. FEMA is not on the ground there at all. They are not in these cities, not in these towns, and not in these villages.
Antoine, how do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, my heart breaks for anyone who's been impacted by these catastrophic storms. I'm from South Carolina. My parents still are without power down in South Carolina, and many people in the neighborhood I grew up in. My sister's a high school principal. The school is just now getting power, so my heart breaks. Hogan and I lived through the 1,000-year flood in South Carolina, and people have still not been made whole from that event. But you respond to that by just giving them the simple truth. The fact of the matter is, before the storm even hit, President Biden had already signed declarations so that resources could be made available very quickly. The FEMA director is on the ground in North Carolina until further notice. More importantly, the resources needed to prevent these type of incidents or these hurricanes and storms from happening have been put in place by way of voting on the Inflation Reduction Act, the largest investment in the climate crisis in the history of the world. I think that's a different response from the Trump campaign and many Republicans who do not even believe the climate crisis is real. Certainly, President Biden's response and Vice President Harris' response is different from saying we're going to nuke a hurricane or we're going to throw bounty paper towels at those who need assistance. You've seen a different kind of response. Now, are people going to be upset? Absolutely, because in these things, people want to be made whole quickly. They certainly want to know where their loved ones are or not, and they want to get back to a sense of normalcy. But patience is always the key. I remember going back to the days of Katrina. There's still people who have not been made whole. And while some people want to shift the blame, it's just the nature of the beast, and it's how these unfortunate incidents play out.
Yeah, Hogan, let's turn out to some more of the debate, right? Senator Vance has had some hiccups, right? Clips have come up of him talking about, childless cat ladies. He was running with the conspiracy theory that Haitian immigrants were eating cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio. And I point this out because, we're living in a very serious time, right? We have the war in Israel and Iran attacking Israel now. We have this crisis unfolding in North Carolina and Tennessee. And you have someone who's sort of had these weird things to say about, while we're at a very critical time in our country. Do you think this is going to hurt him in the debate?
Well, no. I think he's going to go right past it. He's got explanations for these things. But you're talking about J.D. Vance. What about Tim Walz? This guy has a radical record in Minnesota. He's now been caught lying about his military record, about his military service. When he got a DUI, he lied and said he was deaf. Now he's lied about how many times he's been to China. And there's also a weird connection about how many times he's been to China. A lot of questions that have been gone unanswered by Tim Walz. And I think it's incumbent upon J.D. Vance to point those things out and to make him answer those questions. Not to mention the fact this whole persona of him being just a flannel-wearing good old uncle from the Midwest and having those Midwestern values. I don't know how many Midwestern people want taxpayer dollars to fund illegal aliens getting free college tuition or illegal aliens getting free health care. All things J.D. Vance is going to point out tonight that prove Tim Walz is more radical than any vice presidential candidate in history. And, of course, tying that to Kamala Harris, because Tim Walz has been able to do everything that Kamala Harris wishes she could do from the federal level. And you've seen the fallout and how it hurts the American people. He's got to point that out tonight.
Antoine, what do you say to that?
Well, my friend Hogan somehow or another has alternative facts rolling off the tip of his tongue here tonight, with all due respect. Look, he's a two-term governor with a stellar record that has uplifted the people of Minnesota. Minnesota is, the sixth best state to do business with. He's cut taxes. He's given free lunches for children who are in need. He's created an office in the governor's office for missing black girls and boys in that state. Certainly the way he handled George Floyd, working with local prosecutors and so forth, bringing to justice one of the most horrific events that we've seen in this country. And the fact of the matter is he's been an evangelist for progress in this country. And you compare that to J.D. Vance, who comes into this debate, one of the most unpopular vice presidential picks in modern history. We certainly view him as someone who does not have a relationship with the truth, including saying black Haitian immigrants in a small town in Springfield, Ohio, are eating cats and dogs. We know he's been frontliner center for Trump's Project 2025, this constant war on women. He's an election-denying, insurrection supporter extremist. And I think that's what this campaign and that's what tonight will be about, allowing their records to be on display. I'm happy to have the policy conversation, particularly on the issue issue like immigration when J.D. Vance was the top cop and making sure that the bipartisan comprehensive bill that Democrats and Republicans agreed upon in the Congress did not see the light of day. I'm proud of the record that Tim Walz has. I'm proud of Kamala Harris' record, and that will be on display, including IVF and women's issues, because we know those are top issues in this campaign.
Antoine and Hogan, we thank you so much for standing next to each other there, both from South Carolina. I'm sure you guys can agree that you guys have better barbecue and better football teams in North Carolina, but that's probably the only things you guys will agree on tonight. Again, we thank you for being here. We are live tonight as the countdown to the vice presidential debate continues. The VP candidates making their case on a national stage for the last time ahead of the election. Will what they say have an impact at the ballot box? We're in battleground Pennsylvania with what voters are watching for tonight. Kate Snow standing by for us. We are back now here at the vice presidential debate spin room in New York City. The matchup between Governor Tim Walz and Senator J.D. Vance less than 90 minutes away. Voters tuning into the debate, paying close attention to the vice presidential candidate's plans for the economy and views on social issues. Kate Snow is with a group of voters tonight in Pittsburgh. They all identify as more moderate and centrist voters. So, Kate, what are you hearing tonight from those voters you're talking to?
Yeah, it's been really interesting already, Tom. We are watching together this debate, and we are right outside of Pittsburgh. Everybody here is from in and around Pittsburgh. You all kind of do identify as like somewhat in the middle. Some of you are having more of a hard time than others making decisions about this election. Brian, I want to ask you about the economy, because show of hands, how many care deeply about the economy, and that's a motivating factor right now? Most of you, some of you not as much. Brian, you told us it was a big issue for you. You think Biden has done nothing for the economy, is what you said to us.
Yeah, I just don't think he's done a good job. So I've always been sort of socially liberal and fiscally conservative. I thought that under Trump, we were actually in a very good place.
So voting Trump, you're
voting
pretty
Trump,
decided.
Last election, we were in a very good place. Before COVID happened. And so, but just now it's just out of hand. I mean, it's out of hand right now.
Brandon, I know you also said the economy was the #1 issue for you. And what are you thinking about as we go into tonight, as we go into this debate? You told us you want to hear the vice president sort of echoing or being on the same team as their presidential candidate?
Yeah, I'm looking for unity. I want to see the vice presidents in alignment with their ticket mate. I want to see everybody having a clear plan and knowing the particulars of the plan without the ticket mate there.
I wonder why you say that. Is it because there's been so much back and forth? And
so the way I put it is that, Walz is 2 seconds on the ticket. We do have to get to know who he is, but I would like to get past his story. November is next month. So, and then Vance, he seems to misstep and not necessarily agree with Trump all the time. There's just too much of a gray area there for me. Okay. So I want to see unity. Okay,
Claire, you mentioned social issues to us. I know you're Catholic, right? I know you're a mom, you've got kids. Are there particular issues that are motivating you?
There are a few. I mean, I get caught up in the fact that I feel like that these parties, focus so much on low-hanging fruit, and they use these emotional ideas to really rally us, and then they have no plan to actually change those ideas. So we talk about women's rights, we talk about gun violence, and then we've seen in the past 8 years, we're kind of where we were either way. And so I feel like we play on these low-hanging tickets, and it's like, I just would like you to focus on the government, and then kind of there are systematic problems that are broken, and they need to focus on how to fix those.
You're undecided pretty much right now, right?
Very undecided. Yeah. Undecided if I'm voting, almost. It's not really if I'm who the candidate is. I feel like this is just kind of thrown on us. Like, we didn't get a great debate on either side. We got 2 candidates, and that was what kind of election is that? I mean, I was just at Hamilton. Hamilton just came through town, and so many people run for so many elections and stuff. And it's like, I don't think this is what our founding fathers meant. And right now we're in a situation where we get 2 choices, and one of them has backed out, and then another choice was just handed, and it's not handed to her, but she made a great sacrifice, I feel like, to accept that and stuff. But it was just like, for our country. And so, but it's like it's pretty hard for me to understand where we are right now as a country.
I want to try to get to everybody. Meryl, you mentioned women's issues being huge for you.
They are.
And you're pretty much decided you're voting for Harris.
Yes, I am voting for Harris. But reproductive rights for women are extremely important to me. I'm a mother of 3 daughters. They're grown now. God willing, some granddaughters coming. And I'm very concerned about women's rights and the fact that the government feels that they can be in my doctor's office, in my bedroom, or anywhere else in my life, quite honestly. And I just want a hands-off approach on that.
Meryl, I see you nodding along. I'm sorry, Meryl. Rona, I see you nodding. And yet I know that you're thinking of voting for Trump.
Yeah. I completely agree with Meryl when it comes to reproductive freedoms and privacy. And yet I'm thinking about voting for Trump because my biggest concern is that Western civilization is being threatened in a way that really could result in the worst effects for women and for all the individual freedoms that we and most Democrats and Republicans, of course, and Americans really value. And so I'm really thinking more about the foreign policy of each of the campaigns, and I'm troubled by
And John, I don't want to leave John out. You said that you're probably voting for Harris, even though you're a little frustrated with the party.
Yes.
In a word, why?
Well, voting for Harris, my big concern is Trump's talk about overthrowing the Constitution for just a day, which I don't believe for a second would be just that. The work that you hear that Project 2025 is doing about how they basically intend to overthrow the Constitution, executive power all the way, and it's beyond me that people could be okay with that in a presidential election.
All right, we're going to sit here. We're going to watch it together. We're going to comment to each other during the debate, and then maybe you can check in with us after.
No, we'd love to. Kate, before you go, though, I do have one question for that group of voters you have there. Pennsylvania is likely the most important battleground state. Do they feel that as voters, and who do they think has the momentum, Harris or Trump right now?
Tom is asking, you're in Pennsylvania. It is such a crucial battleground state. It might come down to Pennsylvania. Do you feel that pressure? Show of hands. Do you feel that? Yeah, everybody. and do you have a sense of who's winning sort of the battle on the airwaves right now? What are you seeing?
You know, as someone who has voted all over the board, I really think that that Harris killed Trump in the debate. And we'll see what happens today. But I believe that I feel like Walz is kind of like the every American person. We'll see how J.D. Vance sort of circumvents some of the labels that have been put on him.
Anybody else on that question of whether somebody's reaching more of you than others?
I just get the sense when I voted for Hillary against Trump, and I was so certain that Hillary was winning this election, to the extent that it looks like, because I think it does look like Harris is winning this election, only this time I feel like I am very aware of many people who are very quietly not voting for Harris, and I'm just wondering if it's going to be a similar kind of upset surprise. So I don't know who's winning.
And similarly, I wonder in the opposite direction. I drive through, and it depends on which neighborhood you drive through.
The signs are everywhere for both, right? Harris, Trump?
No, not really. No? If you drive through certain neighborhoods, all you see are Harris signs. Other neighborhoods, all you see are Trump signs. And it's concerning to me, and it's actually concerning to me on a much greater level because it speaks about the division in this area as well as this country.
We got to leave it there. Meryl, thank you so much. Tom, I'll send it back to you.
Kate Snow, so insightful. We're definitely going to check back with you after the debate. Tonight, it's not just the candidates in the spotlight on the debate stage. The moderators this evening, Norah O'Donnell and Margaret Brennan of CBS News, will also be under scrutiny by millions of Americans, judging whether they are presiding fairly over the debate. Less than a month ago, David Muir and Lindsay Davis of ABC News faced a firestorm of criticism from the political right after repeatedly fact-checking former President Trump. Critics said they were biased towards Harris, a claim ABC News denies, of course. The big question for the moderators tonight. What's the best way to moderate a debate in this climate and fact-check politicians who sometimes don't always tell the truth? Joining us now are two journalists who covered the Harris-Trump debate. Tara Palmieri, she's senior political correspondent for Puck News, and Corbin Bolus, he's a media reporter at the Daily Beast, who's been covering this over the past couple of weeks. We thank you both for being here. So, Tara, I'm going to start with you. After the last debate, the GOP was incredibly upset about the moderators.
Right.
Former President Trump has been out there blasting the airwaves, saying it wasn't fair. It was 3-on-1. Did he have a point, number one? And number two, what do you think happens tonight?
Well, I think what I know is that Donald Trump plans to truth throughout the entire evening. He wants J.D. Vance to essentially defend him at every turn, even though it doesn't actually help their campaign objective, which is to fill in the gap about who Kamala Harris is for these remaining undecided voters. He really wants J.D. to punch back, which is what he did during the event, during the first debate, and which is essentially why he lost. But he keeps going on privately about David Muir. He really believes that it was biased. He says privately that he wants to sue David Muir, even though he denied that on Truth Social. And and maybe this is another way of them playing the ref, setting the ground. You know, they just announced that they won't be doing a sit-down interview with CBS.
Right, the Trump campaign.
Exactly, which is another way of laying the groundwork that we don't believe that CBS is a credible network.
Right.
And so they're playing the refs, which means that they're worried that they believe that they're at a disadvantage right now. And you have a person that was on stage, J.D. Vance, who said that he was willing to create a story to get the media's attention.
Yeah.
That doesn't give you a lot of credibility walking onto the stage.
Corbin, how does this decision by CBS News, because they've come out and said that their moderators are not going to fact check the two candidates, that they're going to have some kind of QR code. You know, every news organization, including NBC News, fact checks in real time at the debate. So this is nothing new, but that their moderators aren't going to fact check, essentially doing the CNN model. Is that a good thing?
So we saw what happened during the ABC News debate, where the moderators did fact check in real time. They framed their questions in a way where their fact checks were reported. They were able to follow up on those, and that rattled Donald Trump. So CBS has sort of capitulated to an extent by choosing not to fact check in real time. They'll have a team online doing their fact checks. They're redirecting their viewers to their website where they'll be doing the fact checks. So figuring out the best way for them has sort of been to just not do it and not risk irking Donald Trump. But as we saw earlier this evening, whether they do or they don't doesn't matter, because Donald Trump has, as Tara pointed out, laid the groundwork for calling CBS an unfair network by pulling out of the 60 Minutes interview.
Tara, what do you think is best for viewers, for voters? I mean, is it incumbent on the two candidates campaigning against each other, debating, to call them out, or is it the moderator's role?
I think it needs to be a healthy balance of both. I think.
And Republicans say it wasn't a balance in the last debate. Do they have a point, or is that unfounded?
It may have helped the case for ABC if they called out Harris once. You know, because she wasn't completely factual on everything, or she was very vague at times, like, saying, I still have the same values. Okay, but what does that mean? Like, they could have taken her flip-flops a bit further and maybe did a few follow-up questions. So perhaps you could say that. I just think, it's hard when you have Donald Trump up there, but it is on Kamala Harris and it is on J.D. Vance, and it is on Tim Walz to really prosecute the other person, to prosecute their case. And I think if the moderators are too involved, you sometimes lose the point.
Right.
And you kind of lose the gist of, like, who's actually winning this or not. It's kind of like the refs in a game. How involved should they be, too?
Right, exactly. Well, calling fouls. But, yeah, I hear you. Corbin, the candidates this year have already done away with the Commission on Presidential Debates. It's unclear if that's ever going to resurface again. Do you see a world where we don't even have debates?
It's really early to say, because we saw that Donald Trump was committing to 3 different debate dates while also casting down on whether he would do a presidential debate at all. We saw him do one, and now he's saying he won't do any of them. The fact that we got a VP debate shows that the Trump campaign knows the importance of a presidential debate and knows the platform that it gives them to air their vision for the future. But whether they choose to participate in the future depends on tonight. So we may see a future where the candidates decide that they can just deliver their message by themselves. We saw the Harris campaign opt not to give interviews for a while before she sat down with CNN. So what they view for the future may depend on tonight.
Tara, what's one thing you're looking for tonight?
I'm just looking to see how much they get into a tit for tat, what kind of rabbit holes they get into.
Personal attacks or on policy?
I think it's going to be a little bit personal, but the point isn't supposed to be about these two guys. They're both Midwestern, right? But they're two very different generations, and they're going to be telling the stories for their bosses, right? Like Tim Walz is going to be trying to tell Kamala Harris's story, a coastal story to suburban and Midwestern voters, right? And in some ways, JD has to do the same. But JD's a bro, and this guy's like a coach, dad, two different types of masculinity. Who do you like more? JD has some favorability issues. And I'm just curious to see how the two are going to rub up against each other.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I think it could be a great debate tonight.
Right.
Really exciting. Tara Palmieri, we always thank you from Puck. Corbin Bliss from Daily Beast. We appreciate you and all your reporting. We are counting down now to the vice presidential debate. Let's bring back our campaign correspondents, Kelly O'Donnell and Garrett Haake. Garrett, I'm going to start with you. We checked in with you about 45 minutes ago. I know some surrogates have made their way through this spin room. Have you got any new reporting you could share with our viewers?
Just talking to Jason Miller a little bit, the senior communications operative on the Trump campaign. He's been involved in J.D. Vance's prep. He talked about the fact that Vance has been reviewing a lot of tape, that he's been taking this prep seriously, looking back at Walz's previous debates, which I thought was interesting given the sort of lackadaisical handling of prep that we saw from Donald Trump at the top of the ticket. And then one other thing that I thought was interesting that may be worth watching out for tonight is Miller argued that one thing that Tim Walz is going to have to do is defend not just his own record and Kamala Harris's record, but also Joe Biden's record and the area where those things might come into conflict. I suggested, I sort of raised the question of how much do you think Tim Walz defends Joe Biden? Does kind of Biden get thrown under the bus if it helps Harris in the course of this debate? He basically said, stay tuned. So I think watching, the different ways in which Walz can be put on defensive about different people, whereas if you're Vance, you're basically defending Donald Trump and letting everything else fall by the wayside, could be an interesting thing to watch tonight.
Yeah, no, I actually think this is going to be a really fun and interesting debate. Kelly O'Donnell, do we have any last-minute reporting on what Walz is doing right before this debate?
Well, I'm told that he is feeling good and energized. So that is, of course, again, setting expectations. But also that one of the goals that he has tonight is to try to tie President Trump and J.D. Vance to the Project 2025 agenda, which President Trump often says he is not affiliated with that, and they really want to make that argument that that vision for America, which appeals to the MAGA audience but does not appeal necessarily to the middle, that they want to do that. So that's an accomplishment that he hopes to have tonight when the debate is over and people come away with an impression.
Before we go, because we have 30 seconds, Harris's strategy was to make this all about Trump. Do you think Walz is going to do the same thing? He's going to make this about the Trump administration and the 4 years he was president?
A lot of that, but also trying to define in a favorable way Kamala Harris.
All right, Kelly O'Donnell, we appreciate you. It's going to be an exciting debate. We are just moments away here in the spin room in New York City. That's going to do it for this hour of our special coverage of the vice presidential debate. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. Lester Holt and Savannah Guthrie are going to pick up our coverage right now. Again, that debate is picking up in a little over an hour. We can watch right here on NBC News Now, and of course, on the mothership NBC. It's going to be an exciting night of politics. Senator J.D. Vance, Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota going head-to-head for the first time and actually meeting for the first time. That does it for us.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.